A disaster sweeping across western Japan has quietly arrived. This is a silent yet fierce fire, like an invisible beast, devouring every inch of land in the western mountainous areas. From Okayama to Ehime, from mountains to plains, the flames are like the devil's tongue, licking the earth frantically. This is the worst wildfire disaster in Japan in nearly half a century. The fire is so fierce that it seems to devour the entire western region. In just a few days, more than 900 hectares of land were reduced to ashes, 15 buildings were swallowed up in an instant, and thousands of residents were forced to flee their homes. This is not just a natural disaster, but also a cruel war between humans and nature. The center of the disaster is concentrated in two major provinces, Okayama and Ehime. The mountainous areas in the south of Okayama City were ignited first, and the fire quickly spread to the neighboring city of Tamano. In Ehime Prefecture, the mountainous areas in Imabari City also fell into the nightmare of a sea of fire. The wildfires in Miyazaki Prefecture have drawn a thrilling footnote to this disaster. The data is shocking. The fire in the Okayama area has spread to an astonishing 540 hectares, setting a record for the largest forest fire in the history of the prefecture. The fire in Ehime Prefecture is equally fierce, burning an area of more than 410 hectares. These figures are not just cold statistics, but also a record of the lives of families and forests. Wind has become an accomplice in the spread of fire. Strong seasonal winds carry sparks in all directions, causing the originally controllable fire to quickly get out of control. The dry climate and withered fallen leaves provide perfect nutrients for the fire. Experts warn that this may just be a harbinger of disaster brought about by climate change. In this disaster, the Japanese government mobilized quickly. The helicopters of the self-defense forces, like fighter jets in modern warfare, continuously dropped large amounts of water over the mountains to try to contain the fire. As of March 26th, nearly 7,500 people have been evacuated urgently, and more than 3,800 families have been forced to leave their homes. This is not just an evacuation, but also a reselection of life. Japan has experienced an unusually dry winter and early spring. Since 2024 set the record for the hottest year, the shadow of climate change has become increasingly heavy. In February, the northeastern city of Afianado received only 2.5 millimeters of rain, breaking the lowest rainfall record since 1967. This extreme drought has laid the groundwork for the upcoming wildfires. Japan's wildfire season usually runs from February to May, when the air becomes dry and the wind strengthens. This year is particularly dangerous. Withered fallen leaves are like flammable gunpowder, and just a spark is enough to ignite an entire forest. Experts warn that climate change is changing traditional natural cycles, making the occurrence of disasters increasingly unpredictable. On the afternoon of March 23rd, the mountainous area south of Okayama City was first discovered to be on fire. At first, it was just a small area, but strong seasonal winds quickly pushed the fire in all directions. In just 24 hours, the area of the fire quickly expanded from dozens of hectares to 250 hectares. By March 26th, the fire had spread to an astonishing 540 hectares, becoming the largest forest fire in Okayama Prefecture's history. In Imabari, Ehime Prefecture, the fire was just as fierce. The fire started in the Nagasawa area, and the flames devoured everything combustible like a voracious beast. By March 26th, 410 hectares of land had been burned, and 7 houses and 2 warehouses had been destroyed. Local residents watched in horror as the fire continued to advance, as if the end of the world was approaching. The fire in Miyazaki Prefecture was relatively small, but no less terrifying. At noon on March 25th, the Kagamizu area suddenly caught fire. Although the area was only 50 hectares, it was no less threatening. The nearby Kagamizu Elementary School had to postpone its year-end ceremony, and teachers and students were on pins and needles, ready to evacuate at any time. The fire in the Okayama area was the most fierce. The fire showed the characteristics of slow combustion. which means that even if it seemed calm, the flames continued to burn underground. By the evening of March 26th, there were still 30 to 40 locations with thick smoke, and firefighters fought all night, fearing that the fire would get out of control again. The fire in Ehime Prefecture showed even more bizarre characteristics. Residents described the fire in horror as exploding, expanding instantly with the wind. In the Asakura area, a housewife in her 60s described, "I thought the fire had subsided, and suddenly the wind blew and the flames spread like an explosion." The fires in Miyazaki Prefecture are smaller, but equally dangerous. A nearby elementary school was forced to change its schedule, and the principal anxiously watched the smoke column in the mountain, fearing that the fire would suddenly turn to the school campus. The root cause of this disaster lies in extreme climate. Record high temperatures in 2024 caused abnormally dry vegetation. Fallen leaves are like gunpowder, and only a spark can cause a devastating fire. Strong seasonal winds have become the culprit for the spread of fire, carrying sparks in all directions, causing the originally controllable fire to quickly get out of control. Life seems so small and fragile in this raging wildfire. Despite the best efforts of the Japanese government and rescue teams, casualties cannot be completely avoided. At least one firefighter was injured in the fires in Okayama and Ehime. In the Asakura area of Imabari City, a 46-year-old resident anxiously watched his shrine, fearing that the flames would engulf this sacred place that carries the collective memory of the community. Fortunately, as of March 26th, no direct deaths have been reported, but the number of evacuees is shocking. In Imabari City and Seijo City, nearly 7,500 people were evacuated urgently, and more than 3,800 families were forced to leave their homes. Behind these numbers are the moments when countless families suddenly lost their sense of security. An evacuee described the horror of the evacuation. A 29-year-old resident had to flee in a hurry with his 80-year-old grandmother, who had difficulty in moving. The elderly woman had to be sent to the hospital due to her difficulty in moving. This scene vividly shows the fragility and tenacity of human beings in the face of disasters. The property losses are heartbreaking. In the Okayama area, at least 6 buildings, including residences and warehouses, were reduced to ashes in the fire. It was even worse in Ehime Prefecture, where 7 houses and 2 warehouses were completely destroyed. This is not just the loss of buildings, but also the annihilation of family memories. A shrine in Imabari City narrowly escaped being burned, and residents anxiously debated whether to move the shrine's drums and portable shrines in an attempt to protect a sacred site that holds the spirit of the community. One resident said sadly, "We can only watch the fire spread, and this feeling of powerlessness is desperate." The economic losses of the disaster far exceed the direct material losses. The power system has been severely damaged. In Imabari City, the power company had to cut off the power supply in the Asakura area. As of March 26th, about 10 households were still without power. What's more terrifying is that if the fire continues to spread, nearly 76,000 households in the entire Imabari City may face large-scale power outages. Transportation and infrastructure have also been hit hard. In Okayama, the Kojima Bay Bridge had to be closed to avoid the threat of fire, which seriously affected the daily life of local residents. Railway operations were also affected, and JR Shikoku trains had to make emergency U-turns near the fire. The most worrying thing is the potential infrastructure damage. In Imabari City, one of the 2 main transmission lines has been shut down due to the fire. If the fire continues to spread, the other transmission line may also be forced to stop operating, which will cause a large-scale power outage in the city. An electric company official solemnly warned, "We may face a citywide power system paralysis." This potential infrastructure collapse will have a catastrophic chain reaction throughout the region. The education system was also hit. In Miyazaki Prefecture, Kagamisu Elementary School had to postpone its year-end ceremony, and the students' daily lives were completely disrupted by the disaster. This seemingly minor change actually reflects the profound impact of the disaster on the daily life of the community. In this fight with the fire demon, the firefighters are like heroes on the battlefield. They brave the winds of more than 30 kilometers per hour and shuttle between the blazing fire lines. In Okayama and Ehime prefectures, more than 67 fire trucks continue to fight, and the fighters shuttle between the smoke and flames, using their flesh and blood to resist this natural disaster. In the Asakura-Minami area of Imabari City, firefighters even had to continue fighting at night. They knew that a negligence could mean the safety of life and property of hundreds of families. Despite their fatigue, they remained highly alert and ready to respond to emergencies at any time. The intervention of the Japanese self-defense forces is like a precise military operation. As of March 26th, 14 helicopters have been put into combat, carrying out rescue missions uninterruptedly over the two prefectures of Okayama and Ehime. These helicopters are like guardians in the sky, and every drop of water is a wake-up call to the fire demon. Defense Minister Gen Nakatani solemnly stated at a press conference that the Joint Operations Command has been fully involved, and the three services of the Army, Navy, and Air Force have jointly fought to curb the spread of the fire with the greatest effort. This is not just a rescue, but also the highest level of national response to natural disasters. In Ehime Prefecture, self-defense force helicopters carried out 55 precise water drops on the evening of March 25th. Each drop is like a precision-guided weapon, trying to cut off the veins of the fire. In the Okayama area, the helicopter formation is like an air commando in modern warfare, constantly dropping large amounts of coolant on the fire. A helicopter pilot who participated in the rescue said, "This is like a peak showdown with the fire demon. We must remain absolutely calm and precise." Every deployment represents the saving of lives and the protection of homes. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba personally ordered the deployment of mobile power vehicles to deal with possible large-scale power outages. This is the highest level of national response to disasters. The Emergency Management Agency has deployed emergency firefighters to 8 counties to form a nationwide rescue network. In Imabari and Okayama, authorities acted quickly. On March 26th, nearly 7,500 people were evacuated and more than 3,800 families left their homes. Evacuation is not just an order, but the greatest respect for life. The local government has established 7 emergency shelters to provide the most basic survival guarantees for evacuated residents. An evacuated elderly said, "We lost our home, but at least we saved our lives." This sentence reveals the most simple human brilliance in the disaster. This wildfire is like a huge ecological butcher knife, ruthlessly cutting the green lungs of Western Japan. In just 3 days, the forest damage area in Okayama Prefecture has expanded to an astonishing 540 hectares, equivalent to the area of about 750 football fields. The forests in Ehime Prefecture have also been hit hard, and 410 hectares of land have become a charred ruin. Compared with historical data, this is already the worst forest fire in Japan in nearly half a century. Every hectare of burned forest means the lives of hundreds of trees and the loss of habitats for thousands of species. Experts describe this as an ecosystem massacre. The ecological damage caused by the fire goes far beyond the visible surface. Ecologists warn that the impact of this disaster on wildlife is devastating. Small mammals, birds, and reptiles in the forest have almost no chance of escape. The ecosystem within a few kilometers of the fire has almost completely collapsed. At the fire site in Miyazaki Prefecture, some surviving animals wandered like refugees. Researchers found that even if the fire is controlled, it will be difficult for these animals to rebuild their habitats in the short term. The recovery of the ecosystem may take decades. Long-term ecological damage, invisible scars. The ecological damage caused by the fire is deep and long-term. The soil structure has been completely changed, and the microbial community in the surface soil has been devastated. The large-scale loss of vegetation will lead to soil erosion and a sharp decline in biodiversity. Experts estimate that it may take 50 to 100 years for this forest to fully restore its original ecosystem. What's more terrifying is that this burned forest was originally an important ecological barrier. They once regulated the local climate, prevented soil erosion, and slowed down wind speed. Now, these functions are gone. The impact of this disaster on global climate change is even more far-reaching. The 540 hectares of forest burned means the instantaneous release of a large amount of carbon storage. Roughly estimated, the fire may have released more than 100,000 tons of carbon dioxide at one time, equivalent to the carbon emissions of tens of thousands of cars in a year. What's more worrying is that this large-scale forest fire may form a vicious cycle. Climate warming leads to more droughts, which in turn lead to more forest fires, further exacerbating global warming. This disaster is no longer just a local event, but a microcosm of global climate change. Ecological expert Masahiko Kimura said, sadly, "This is not just the loss of forests, it is the collapse of the entire ecosystem. Every wisp of smoke is the last warning the Earth sends us." The ecological impact of this disaster is far-reaching and systematic. It not only changes the local landscape, but is also likely to trigger a series of chain reactions, affecting the ecological balance of the entire region. In this game between humans and nature, the fragile ecosystem has become the biggest victim. In the embers of this wildfire, the deepest scar is not physical, but the mental trauma deeply engraved in the hearts of residents. A 53-year-old resident from Imabari City, Akiko Sato, described it as follows: "We not only lost our house, but also our sense of security. Whenever the wind blows, I will subconsciously look out the window, fearing that there will be another flame." Psychologists analyze that this persistent stress response is a common psychological symptom after a disaster. In the shelters in Okayama and Ehime, many residents showed obvious symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, insomnia, panic attacks, and extreme vigilance. A young mother said, "The child always wakes up screaming at night and dreams of being engulfed by fire." As of March 26th, nearly 7,500 people were forced to leave their homes, and 3,800 families fell into a state of rootless wandering. The shelter became their temporary home, but the inner uneasiness and anxiety followed them like a shadow. In an evacuation center in Imabari City, the elderly, children, and young people squeezed into a small space, trying to rebuild a weak order of life. An 80-year-old man, Mr. Yamada, said sadly, "I have lived on this land for 80 years, and now everything is gone. Not only the house, but also the memories that have accompanied me throughout my life." This pain of losing one's roots far exceeds the material loss. Community reconstruction faces unprecedented challenges. It is not just physical reconstruction, but also rebuilding trust and connections between people. In the Asakuranami area, residents spontaneously organized a community reconstruction committee. They not only discussed house reconstruction, but also talked more about how to regain the spirit of the community. A 35-year-old community leader said, "We need more than just houses, but to rebuild our spiritual home." This collective consciousness has become the greatest hope for reconstruction. Local governments began to organize psychological counseling and community reconstruction workshops to try to repair these social ties torn by the disaster. The Japanese government has launched a large-scale psychological assistance program. In Okayama and Ehime, more than 50 psychological counselors have been deployed to shelters and communities. They not only provide psychological counseling, but also try to help residents rebuild their confidence in the future. Particularly noteworthy is child psychological intervention. In Miyazaki Prefecture, school psychologists began to provide special psychological counseling for children who have experienced disasters. A psychological teacher said, "We must help children understand and get out of fear and let them believe that the future is still bright." Surprisingly, the community showed shocking resilience in this disaster. Some residents began to see the disaster as an opportunity for rebirth. In Imabari City, a group of young people began to discuss how to build a more environmentally friendly and resilient community. They began to think about how to incorporate more advanced fire prevention technology and ecological concepts into reconstruction. A young environmental engineer said, "Maybe this disaster is a turning point. We can rebuild better and stronger." This attitude is the unique spirit of Japanese society in the face of disasters.